Yes, I touched on anchoring a little bit in the last video, and I'd like to just expand on that a little bit. And I'm going to talk directly to competitive equestrians, whether it's a barrel racer or show jumper or dressage, it doesn't really matter. And this can go across the board for any athlete in any sport when it comes to competitive equestrians. Now, just imagine if every time you went through the gate, it's always an enclosed arena, and there's always an opening that you enter and leave from. And so, what if every time you went through the gate, it automatically triggered you to remember to assume a confident posture, think positive thoughts, recall a state where you were at your best? Ideally, that would be riding at your best because this is the context we're talking about. To do it hypnotically is a very beneficial thing because you can really intensify the state in a hypnotic trance. And that's usually what I would do because I'm a hypnotist. That's the way I would go about it, but it's not necessary. It just gives it a little bit more charge. You basically get the person in that state, and then you have them, say, hold their reins a certain way. That's probably the easiest thing. Or even a head tilt, put your head up and maybe cock it to one side a little bit, just slightly, not so much that people can really notice it, but enough that you notice it. And so you set this anchor, and you do it when the person is going into their most powerful state. It's going to have a rise and then a peak and then a fall. You want to set the trigger on the way up. When you're starting to go up, when you're starting to intensify, a lot of people wait until they hit the peak spot, but that's usually too late because they hit the peak and who knows how long they're going to be peaking before they go down the other side. It's best to set the anchor as it's intensifying, as the emotional state is intensifying. Now, this could be a time when you performed, say you're a show jumper, and you think about a time you performed really, really well. Your horse was just hitting every jump, everything was clicking, all cylinders were go. And you think about that time, it could be in a competition, it could be in a practice arena. That doesn't really matter. Just a time when you knew you were nailing it, and you just got that feeling internally that you were nailing it. And so you revivify, it's a fancy word for relive that experience. First, you ask the rider what exactly happened, and then you take their words and you give it back to them slowly and with emotion, and then that's going to intensify. And what were you seeing? What were you hearing? What were you smelling and tasting and touching? And how did it feel inside? You just build it up according to that memory. As they're getting more and more into that experience, into that memory, you set the anchor. It could be you just take the reins and put it in between two fingers that aren't the normal way of riding. And this is just for going into the arena. Once you start to perform, on the way in, if you change the way you're holding the reins, that's going to remind you of that experience. It's going to take you back to that experience because you're going to link it. And actually, if I was doing this, I would probably get a pair of old reins and have the person hold the reins exactly the way that you wanted to as you were going into the arena. So that just etches it in and makes it more powerful. Instead of imagining doing it for real, it's going to be that much more powerful. Just think about what a difference that might make. Instead of going into the arena saying, wow, I have to get a score of X amount of points in order to be hitting the leaderboard. I look at the other people that already performed, and that's not something you should really track that closely because you should be focused on yourself, not on what the other competitors are doing. You're going to know the situation, although you don't want to dwell on it because that's just going to cause more internal angst. You are going to be aware of it. And at that moment, going into the ring, if left to your own devices, you're going to start thinking things like, wow, how am I going to do this? This isn't going to be easy. You're going to think things that aren't going to put you in your best state of mind. Whereas if you're holding the reins a certain way, that's going to flash back in your mind the memory of that great experience, and you're going to start thinking more about it, and you're going to have some things you're going to say to yourself at the same time to really build up the experience as you're going into the ring. And so not only are you not thinking thoughts that are going to take down your performance, you're thinking thoughts that are going to raise your performance. And it's just something that very few of your competitors are doing. What an advantage, what an edge. Tom O'Ryan, equestrianhypnocoach.com.